Charleston Fire, how can I help you?
Yes, sir. I'm at Superstore in Highway 13. There's a huge fire on the back of the room.
It was a little after 7 p.m. on June 18, 2007, when smoke billowed out of the Sofa Superstore.
I want you to come on Washington Street, Savannah Highway, and come in the front door.
Dozens of firefighters attacked the blaze as they discovered someone was trapped.
Can you help, please?
You inside, whereabouts?
At the back.
Oh, at the back. At the back. He's in the back. He's trapped in the back.
Firefighters saved Sofa Superstore employee Jonathan Tyrell.
They got the guy that was trapped inside.
Relief in the rescue. But it wasn't over. Not even close. 9 firefighters were trapped inside, but no one knew the tragedy that would follow. Final words captured on their radios. And then, silence.
On June 18, 2007, at approximately 7 o'clock p.m., the Sofa Superstore in Charleston, South Carolina, caught on fire. The store was about 42,000 square feet. It was open for business, and employees were present when the fire started. In this incident, 9 firefighters perished and 18 were injured. The Sofa Superstore was a single-story, steel truss, large open space building. The building had gone through several renovations over a 15-year period. The store's contents housed large amounts of foam-filled furniture, and there were no sprinklers in the building. At 7:08, dispatch receives a call of a fire behind the store. At 7:12, all dispatch companies arrive on scene, and it was reported to be a trash fire. The opening of a door caused the fire to grow immediately. At 7:26, store employee calls 911 stating that he's trapped inside. At 7:29, Mayday was called over the radio. At 7:31, employee was rescued from the building and all firefighters were ordered to evacuate. At 7:35, the front windows busted with brown smoke flowing out and crews exited the showroom. At 7:36, search for the missing firefighters started. At 7:38, everybody was ordered out of the building again. Yet no response from Engine 15 captain after several attempts. 7:44, firefighters were running low on water pressure. At 7:51, the showroom roof collapsed. And at 10 o'clock, the fire was controlled. The strategy and tactics operations were initially, they took an offensive interior attack at the loading dock, search and evacuate building victims inside, prevent the fire from spreading to the showroom and warehouse. Multiple hose lines were deployed. Pre-connect was too short, so that required the firefighters to exit and add more lines. The crews advanced lines to the back of the showroom near the loading dock area. The rescue operations, they cut through the roll-up door with the Halligan and the axe. The saw wasn't used because of the incompatible blade. The fire escalated and more apparatus were called. Additional fire hazards were found in the yellow building next to the D side. It was filled with fuel, gasoline, oil, full of vehicles, and other flammables. So a hose line was also used to protect the yellow building as well. Outside resources were dispatched. The city water supply was called to increase the water pressure in the area. Mutual aid crews were called to assist interior crews in distress, and off-duty firefighters and officers responded, some with PPE and some without.
During this incident, formal incident command was never formally announced or transferred as ranking officers arrived on scene. Although the department policy was that the highest ranking officer on scene became the incident commander, multiple orders were being given to engine and ladder companies from captains, battalion chiefs, and the assistant chief. In either case, there seemed to be a clear lack of a designated command post.
This slide shows where the fire was versus where the employee was rescued. This is another view showing relatively the same thing, but includes the position of the engines and hose layouts. Notice that the hose layouts are going across the street. This shows where the hydrants were in engines 16 and 12, pumping water for engines 10 and 11. Here we see the assistant chief leading the rescue team around the building to extricate the trapped employees. Here we see the fire spread direction internally and the placement of extra apparatuses showing up on scene. The fire is well involved at this stage. And here, the next few slides list all of the crews that arrived on scene and what their main assignments were. This was a very complex incident.
They did what they and every firefighter is prepared to do every day they put on their badge, to risk their life and, if necessary, to give their life to make their community safe.
The call came in last night around 7 o'clock that a fire had come in here at the Sofa Superstore around 7 o'clock. At that point, agencies responded in full force, 12 of them out here in all. But by the end of the night, one agency was missing several firemen. We've learned today that 9 of them were missing, all from the Charleston City Fire Department.
They went into this raging fire to put it out, to protect the neighborhood, to bring it under control.
Onlookers say all of a sudden it was like a whoosh of fire, a tornado of fire, if you will, that just was exploded above the roof, caused the roof to fall in on top of the 9 firefighters who were inside the building.
When it went, I mean, you just, woof, it's the sound. I mean, you just can't describe. You fear for your men.
I have the same feeling that I had on September 11th.
Line of duty deaths. 9 firefighters died and 18 were injured that day. 4 captains, 2 engineers, and 3 firefighters were of the 9 people killed, all with various years of experience in the fire service. The majority of the fire guys killed were the ones that first arrived on scene. Some were on the right side of the showroom trying to put out the fire that was quickly spreading from the loading dock area, and several from the large main showroom space. The primary cause of death was smoke inhalation and burns, but what led up to it was these firefighters were losing orientation due to the smoke filling up from floor to ceiling and the heat distress they were experiencing. So what really went wrong on that day? How did 9 firefighters become trapped by the fire? How did the fire spread, and why didn't firefighters see it coming? Why did the fire spread so quickly from what was confirmed as a small trash fire? And how can this be avoided in the future? After this tragic event occurred, and the investigation was concluded, a long list of improvements needed to be made. Here's a pretty good list of lessons learned from these mistakes. From scene size-up. Proper scene size-up was partially conducted, but no TIGs were used to better understand the fire. Assessing risk versus benefits would have been helpful before beginning an offensive attack. Incident pre-planned information was not referenced. If they had done that beforehand, they would have known that there was a closer hydrant than when they had originally started. Also, too, the building construction had a note in the pre-plans about the potential of a high collapse on the roof. Tactics. Switching to a defensive attack was never ordered, and should have been. The unoccupied building offered little reward, therefore deserved little risk. They never used the 2-in and 2-out rule. Ventilation was not used to aid in firefighting. There was no RIC or RIT team designated. Ensuring enough personnel are available before starting an offensive attack would be very important. Some SOPs were used, but those fell through the cracks as the fire escalated. Taglines could have been used to help with firefighters from getting lost in large structures. Starting with a 2.5 line hose would have been more effective than using just the smaller lines. Adequate water supply for the size of the structure and fuel loads were never established to be properly supplied to engines. Establishing a master stream earlier on would have been a big one. That was started very late in this. Exits could have been marked with strobe lights to aid firefighters to doors too. Incident command. There was no IC used whatsoever in this incident, but number 1 listed here, they could have done that easily. The assistant fire chief should have declared IC, and when the fire chief showed up, they should have transferred the IC to him, and he should have declared it clearly over the radio. But anyways, nothing else was used here. It was definitely a lesson learned. Traffic control and water supply issues was a major issue for this incident. The police department should have been there to control the traffic. The firefighters were trying to lay down hoses across the street. Drivers were driving right over them, interrupting the water supply and blowing those hoses. This was a major issue for the entire fire scene because they couldn't get adequate water. Training was another issue, as listed here. Everything there needed improvement, needed to be revamped.
History teaches lessons that can help us move forward. Tradition, doing things the way they've been done for generations, allows us to honor our past. Striking a balance between the two can be difficult.
We are Southerners, and we're strong family ties, hugely involved in tradition. And it's not always the right thing to do. And sometimes that's hard for us to realize.
Sometimes we get stuck in tradition and things that we do, we're used to doing.
There used to be a lot of hard-nosed, old-school firefighters and captains, and we did a lot of rushing in before we evaluated the situation.
Tradition is excellent. I believe in tradition. What I don't believe in is hiding behind a tradition so you don't have to incorporate new ideas and strategies and evolve your fire department.
After death, the 9 found, carried out by their brothers.
In every firehouse, on every rig, the firefighters who were lost in the Sofa Superstore fire are remembered, the Charleston 9.
My father was in the fire department, my uncle was in the fire department, my son is in the fire department, and we value traditions, but we also have to move forward and work in the modern environment.
It became apparent that too much hard tradition was getting in the way of change. People had been doing things the same way for so long, and the reason to keep doing it is because that is just the way they've always done it. And maybe some would say they never had enough reason to change anything, or it has always worked for them because nothing bad has ever happened to them or anyone they know. Change had to happen though. The mayor had made that pretty clear. He went ahead and hired someone outside the department. In 2008, Mayor Joseph Wiley welcomed Chief Tom Carr, who was a chief from Maryland Montgomery County Fire. Chief Tom Carr made a lot of change. Almost everything changed. There was a little bit of resistance, but eventually he gained wide respect from the departments for his duty and his commitment. Here are some positive results. This is data from NFPA's website about LODDs, firefighters in particular that had been killed directly on the fire ground operations on scene in the United States. This excludes 9/11, 2001 terrorist attacks. But this is pretty similar to kind of what happened, in this incident because people died, obviously, right on the fire ground. But as you can see, though, since 1980, every decade, based on the average, the numbers of deaths have gone down. So this is just a positive thing to look at that, with technology advancements and training and making some changes here and there, deaths are going down because we're making a bigger emphasis on firefighter safety. It is sad that it takes a tragedy such as this to affect a group of people, a community, or an organization to institute change. Even though we witness our neighboring cities and states within our nation having gone through their own losses, it doesn't seem to hit close enough to home until it does. LODDs could be avoided if we observe and learn from others' mistakes and misfortunes. To a certain degree, we do through organizations like the NFPA, but they are only as good as the department that adopts them proactively. Yet so many departments still do not for one reason or another. With our long-standing history in the fire service, for which we embrace and that we are proud of, there is no excuse in that we shouldn't be mastering the best life-preserving methods, firefighter safety, tactics and strategies, SOPs, and so on.